All right. Well, welcome. I'm nervous, which is good. I like being nervous. Of the many things that I do coach people and train people to speak and to be better presenters and have more presence. And I always say to people, a lot of times people say to me, "Oh, well, I'm always so nervous when I speak," and I always say, "Well, you don't really want to get rid of that, right?" Like Tom Brady says, he throws up before every game. He's done all right, minus a few deflated footballs, anyways. So I don't think being nervous is a bad thing. I think when you're nervous, it means that you care. So I'm nervous. You guys are all here, and this is my first time. This is actually the first real speaking event I've done branded under Where There's Smoke. So it's kind of exciting. I mean, I've been a professional speaker for 10 years. I launched this podcast almost 6 months ago. And this is really my baby. So I'm excited to share some stuff with you guys today. Just a couple things I'll say. So they gave me about 20 to 30 minutes to talk, okay? Which I said, okay, great. I like to jam a lot in, okay? And when we get to the end of this presentation, I'm going to share with you a few of the podcasts that are actually relevant to this. So each of our podcasts is about 30 minutes long, and we've got 24 of them, so that's about 12 hours. And I'm going to say that coming out of this presentation, there's probably going to be another 6 hours you could go listen to. But I'm just going to jam a bunch in, because I don't know about you guys, but one of the things that really, really, really drives me crazy is when I'm on like an hour-long webinar, and at the end of it, I'm like, that was a 10-minute webinar, and you just wasted an hour of my life, right? Or when you're in like an hour meeting and you're like, that was a 5-minute meeting, right? And one of the greatest, of all the feedback I get from Where There's Smoke, one of the feedback that makes me so proud is people always say, man, you don't waste a second. Like that show is just, and I'm like, it makes me so happy. Because I've lost so many hours of my life sitting in hour-long webinars that should have been 5 minutes, So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're not going to waste a second. Is that okay? Are we okay with that? All right. So first of all, let me just kind of share a little info. So this is Where There's Smoke. It is the tagline for Where There's Smoke is self-development through the lens of current events, sports, and pop culture. So basically what we do is kind of like a mix of The Daily Show meets This American Life meets being a better person. All right? So I look at the world. We take what's going on in the world. We use it as a filter to talk about how we can be better. We bring in movie clips. We bring in audio clips. It's very dynamic. If you have ADD, you will love my show. And I think that's why a lot of creatives love it. So when I created this show, one of the conversations I got caught up in for about 8 or 9 months, because about 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to branch out and really take, everything I'd been doing in the speaking world had been under other people's umbrellas. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to launch my message. What do I want to do, right? And I got caught up in this conversation that maybe some of you have heard, which is, who's your avatar? Who's your avatar, right? So I was in this conversation, who's my avatar? Who's my avatar? For like 8 or 9 months trying to figure out who my avatar was. And then finally I was just like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to create the show that I want to hear. And I'm going to see if maybe there's some people out there like me. And I really didn't know. I told my buddies, I'm going to do this for a year, and at the end of the year I'll know either it'll be great or I'll realize the world has no interest in what I have to say. And I'm fine with either one, okay? I just want to find out, right? And so now it's been interesting. Now that I launched a show, now I'm finding out who my avatar is by who listens. And one of the greatest surprises for me has been that we have an incredibly creative audience. I mean, graphic designers, artists, musicians, actors, YouTubers, like people that are out there doing awesome creative stuff love our show, which makes me super happy. So I'm really excited to be in a room full of creative people. There's the show. A couple things, cool things happen. Lulu Miller, who's the host of Invisibilia, heard our show. She tweeted out about it. She called it a freight train of ideas and experiments, which I thought was really, really cool. So if you don't know Invisibilia, in their first month, they had 10 million downloads. I can tell you that's a few more than we have. So I actually tweeted back and forth with Lulu. I asked her if I could have one of her zeros. I was like, can I just have one of your zeros? You can keep the other ones, just one, right? And then this was also really cool. AV Club has something called Podmas. Every week they put a list of their favorite podcast episodes. And what I like about this is there are some very, very, very big podcasts that have never been on this list. Because this is not a list you can call in a favor to get on. This is not a list you can buy your way onto. This is a list of like a bunch of cool little creative people at AV Club who only put stuff on that list that they think is cool. So, it's a little snobby actually, to be honest with you, but when you're on it, it doesn't feel so bad. You're like, it's a little snobby, but I'm on it, so that's good, right? Right? So that's our show. So who the heck am I, right? So who the heck I am, this is my bio on the Where There's Smoke page, which I like, because Mark mentioned I train professionals at Fortune 1000 companies. My professional bio sounds a lot, has a lot of company names in it. But I like this bio, okay? So this bio says that on the way to where there's smoke, I've launched 2 multi-million-dollar companies, which I did, which sounds more impressive than it is. But basically, it just means that most of what I'm teaching, I learned in the trenches, which I think matters, because I don't like people who teach stuff they've never actually done. I have studied with some of the world's leading self-development teachers. So I've visited 40 countries. I released an album. I started in a stage musical. I got married. I escaped from Alcatraz. I became a father, and I currently train coach professionals, right? So just some evidence of this. So that's my album. Okay, that came out in 2003. This was me I started in a stage musical in San Francisco, and I had 15 minutes of fame. I was on the cover of the Examiner. This is me about to escape from Alcatraz, okay? So it really happened. And that's me and my son about 2 weeks ago. So I am a father. And we're wearing shirts. Mine says Big Boss. His says Little Boss. But as I like to say, that's in size only, because he's definitely the big boss, right? Anyone who has kids know that you lose all your power. So that's a little bit about me. I want to hear a little bit about you guys. Specifically, what I want to hear is what is your current experience in your world, right? In your creative world, and specifically, what are some of the challenges? And I talked to Mark, and he kind of crowdsourced some ideas, and I heard a bunch of stuff, and I formulated this presentation off of that stuff. But I just want to hear from you guys. Like, what is it that's really frustrating you right now, or what do you find really challenging in your world, specifically around your business and your career?
Lack of understanding from people about the power and the relevance of design. Like,
okay.
I'm a graphics designer. It's like to have to be convincing all the time. It's exhausting.
So really convincing people of the value of what you do. Okay, great. What else? Yeah?
I'd like to open a photography studio, but a lot of photography studios are shutting them down instead.
Okay.
So I want to start off with everybody saying, don't do that, you're stupid.
Okay, so we got a lot of naysayers, a lot of people saying, why would you want to do that? All right, cool. What else?
Have a business that has hit a certain threshold, and no matter how many books I've read or podcasts I've listened to, it's way more complicated than you think it's going to be. And you can prepare for it, but right now we're in the middle of it, and it's definitely harder than we all thought.
Okay. Yeah.
West Coast lack of ability to make a decision.
So I'm from Toronto, and I spent the last 19 years living in San Francisco. And I do. I just moved back to Toronto about 6 weeks ago. Don't ask me why I moved back to Toronto. It involves a 4-year-old, and I'm still emotionally dealing with it. But I call San Francisco a yeah maybe town. That's what I've always called it. Want to do this? Yeah, maybe. Or yes, unless something else comes up more interesting anytime within now and 5 minutes before I'm supposed to do that, right? And it's extremely frustrating. Yeah.
Trying to adapt to the monetization stream, and how to figure out which is the best monetization model as the industry progresses.
Okay.
Fear.
Fear of? Don't say everything.
Well, I was recently invited to Dubai.
Okay.
So for the next 6 months, I freaked out every time I heard about ISIS, head shoppings. And then I was afraid of getting kidnapped. I was afraid of going to jail because I brought Tylenol into the country. And just culture. It's actually fear, but it's also culture, just culture shock.
Okay.
Mind you, I did go there and everything was fine.
Yeah.
And but after that, I feel sort of numb because of transnational this and that, about the pace, the rate of change, the cultural divides, the doom and gloom, the stuff in the news, the propaganda.
God, you're bumming me out. Forget it, talk's over.
It's a constant bombardment.
All right, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I curate exhibitions on design and architecture,
Okay.
and currently I have a hierarchical, marketer-driven organization that is over-managing a creative project. And I'm trying to do it with the creative team in London and here. So what do you do with a hierarchical traditional micromanaging management model when you're trying to give them what they need.
Okay, got it. What else?
I think supporting the value of your offerings. And I think for a lot of us creatives coming out of design and art-based training, often there's not as much language around promoting that value and how to insert it in certain ways. So that constant re-educating of your clientele of the value of your services and goods in a number of different positions, because I think what makes creatives unique is our abilities in a wider range of situations, and then being able to support that in a clear and consistent way that values us all better, more accurately.
Okay. Yeah.
It's easy to get people to get involved in situations like this where you can be a part of the team that promotes it and advocates and gets a group together. What I find difficult is finding the next person to carry that torch or to mentor and find someone who wants to continue that and grow that.
Yeah.
So everyone benefits, but few people continue. So that's difficult.
Okay. All right, there was some hands up here.
The distinction between fact and opinion.
Oh my.
Well, that's easy. Yeah, Google is fact.
Show them the door.
And
it's pretty narrow, but actually if you're trying to do something different and communicate how you're special in a special way, but then maybe working predominantly with clients who have complicated procurement processes, which tries to narrow or take out the special offering that you may have and to make it comparable to other people, right? So how do you communicate your offering and your uniqueness in a way in, say, usually public procurement process?
okay, cool. All right, so we could go on and on. I could hear from everybody. And, one thing I'll tell you right now, so you all get really, really excited, I don't have any answers for you. What I do have is some ideas, some concepts, a lot of questions, that in them maybe you'll find some answers. I mean, obviously I came here today, I have 30 minutes to talk to a group of people that all have very varied challenges, right? And so what I wanted to do today was provide something that's overarching that I think might help a lot of you. And specifically, one of the things that I find when I work with individuals, companies across the board, right? Whether it's big organizations, small organizations, entrepreneurs, whatever, is that everybody has this feeling of, oh my God, there's all this stuff that happens in my industry, in my business that I can't control, And I understand that this stuff happens in other industries, but it's so much worse in my industry. Like everyone kind of feels it, like, oh, I know that, but you don't understand. Like, I mean, the commoditization of design right now and crowdsourcing, and people have devalued what I do. Like, I'm sure I get that other stuff, but you don't understand. Like, and it's not to take away from what's going on for you guys. And I'm not even here to tell you that you're not right. Maybe you are right. Maybe you are actually in the industry where there's the most amount of stuff that's out of your control that drives you crazy. But the point is, it exists for everybody, right? So the conversation becomes really, okay, so what can I provide you guys in 20 to 25 minutes that I think can help you to push through that, okay? And so at the end of this presentation, or in kind of the last thing I'm going to talk about is actually something very specific around how you can look at things in your business, in your industry that are out of your control, okay? That are completely out of control, that drive you mad. But how can you maybe grab a little bit of control from them? Because I believe you can, okay? But before I do that, I want to set some foundation, and this will make sense when we get through it, because I actually believe there's something else that happens underneath all of that really matters. And for some people, it really matters. And for other people, it kind of matters. And we'll find out as we go through this. So I want you guys to think about, what do you consider success for you? Okay? And really for most people, when you talk about success, what most people are talking about is happiness, right? Or contentment. This feeling of, yeah, okay. Like I'm happy with my life. I have the things I want. I'm operating the way I want. Whether that's money, time, freedom, feeling, whatever it is, right? But there's this idea of what do you want and why do you want it? And for me, when I work with people, the number one thing I really want to know is, Like, what is success to you? What's my term is full expression, right? I always want to be living my full expression. And what is that to you? For some people, their full expression is sitting on the couch and binge watching Breaking Bad. Cool, go for it, man. Let's set it up. Let's make it happen, right? I don't care what it is. You know, some people want to change the world. Some people just want to change their community. Some people just want to help their kid. It doesn't matter to me what it is, but what is it, right? And so one of the things I did about a couple years ago when I started to say, okay, I want to launch something into the world, is I reached out to everybody I'd worked with over the last 10 years. And I gave them a series of questions to try to find out a little bit about what they wanted. And I actually got a pretty good response. I got probably about 350 people that got back to me, which is pretty good, right? And out of 350 people in all different industries, people who were everything from entrepreneurs to CEOs of huge companies, people that were parents and not parents, people that were 22 years old and people that were 72 years old, I found that everybody, there was this theme, boom, 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 that everybody wanted consistently three things. They wanted more of three things. Can anyone guess or have any thoughts of what do you think people want more of? Time?
Happiness.
Money? Happiness? Health? Work-life balance? Love? Okay. What? A six-pack, more six-pack. So this is what I found, and people use different words for this stuff, but ultimately I found that this is the three things people wanted more of. They wanted more time, they wanted more influence, and they wanted more impact. Okay? So they wanted more time. That includes work-life balance. That includes lifestyle. They wanted more influence, right? They wanted to be able to have the things they wanted to do. If they worked in a company, they wanted to know how they could have their ideas. They wanted to be able to sell things better, to enroll people better. And they wanted more impact. People want to feel like what they do matters. They want to feel like they're making a difference. And so I took those three ideas and I formulated them into this concept where I started working with people around these three concepts, which I called leadership, lifestyle, and legacy. Because what I find is that everyone fits in here. Some people only care about one of these things. Some people care about two of them. Some people care about three of them. Even if they care about all three, there's usually one that matters the most to them. Okay? That people have an emotional connection to what I call leadership, lifestyle, and legacy. And I'm going to break these things down for you. Okay? So number one, leadership. Okay? Here's how I look at leadership. Leadership is basically how you want to show up every day. And so the question that I simply ask myself, or I have other people ask, is who is the man or the woman you want to be? Just who's the man or woman I want to be? How do you want to show up? That's leadership, right? Every day. Sometimes people say, well, I have people say this to me a lot. Well, I don't really think of myself as a leader. I'm like, well, everyone's a leader, right? Because ultimately, you're leading yourself into every single thing you do. So it doesn't matter to me if you're sitting alone in a room and you never talk to anyone, you're still leading yourself. So everyone's a leader, whether they identify themselves as one or not. But how do you want to show up? And so I started playing this game. And the game I started playing, this is years ago, was I would ask myself this question of how would the man I want to be, ... whatever I was doing. Okay, so I would be sitting down and I'd be having a hamburger for lunch. And I'd say, how would the man I want to be eat this hamburger? Now that sounds funny, but think about it, right? So one of the things I noticed when I asked that question is I eat really fast. So I'm just like, and I'm like, wait, would the man I want to be really be in such a hurry? Wouldn't he chew his food? Wouldn't he enjoy the flavor? You know? Or then I had this thought, I was like, what if I was on a first date right now, and I was sitting across from a woman, I met her, and I thought she was amazing, and I'm like, oh my God, I really want, would I be eating my hamburger the way I'm eating it right now? Because there's nothing amazing about how I'm eating this. This girl would not want to go on a second date with me the way I'm eating my hamburger right now, right? And then I'd be like, how would the man I want to be walk down these stairs? And it sounds crazy, but then I would I'm not even paying attention. Sometimes I leave my house to go to a meeting, and I get to the meeting, and I don't even remember walking there. And I started realizing, well, I'm not even conscious when I'm walking downstairs. I'm just on autopilot. And then it was also bigger things. You know, when I had a decision to make in business, well, what would the man I want to be do right now? You know, would he do this or this? How would the man I want to be manage these people? How would the man I want to be reply to this question I was just asked? And it became this really cool thing about how I want to show up. And one of the things that I realized in this process was that something that's really big around leadership is vulnerability and courage. And I just did an episode of our show on vulnerability a few weeks ago, and I had a lot of quotes on there from Brene Brown. And probably many of you maybe know Brene Brown. She did a TED Talk that I think is the 3rd or 4th most watched TED Talk of all time. And she likes to say that one of the things she says is that vulnerability is the guts to show up and be seen. right? The guts, right? And she had this quote that I really, really loved. When you don't care what anyone thinks, you lose your capacity for connection. But when you're defined by what people think, you lose your courage to be vulnerable. And to me, that's that medium ground, right? If we walk around and we think, well, I'm just going to do everything that I'm going to show up the way I want to show up, and I don't care what you think, well, then I'm not really connecting with people, right? But at the same token, if I'm like, okay, well, whatever you want, well, now I'm not really having the courage to be who I want to be. So it really is this balance of how am I aware of the people that are around me, and yet at the same time, do I have the courage to actually be the person that I want to be? Right? And I think in creativity, and when I think about creativity, I mean, I consider myself a creative person. I'm a writer, I'm a musician, I'm an artist. But I think, entrepreneurs, parents, right? Anytime you're creating something, you're a creator, right? And when it comes to creativity, I think that this idea is really, really huge. Because if we're not showing up, if we're not creating what we want to create and what's in alignment with us, we're not really going to enjoy what we're doing, and we're going to feel a little lost. But at the same time, if we're not creating what other people want, well, then we're going to be in this silo, right, where no one's going to really care about what we're doing. And most of us are doing it because we actually want to make an impact, right? So leadership, okay? Lifestyle. So this is a big one for me. I always say I'm a lifestyle guy. I've always been a lifestyle guy. I love making a difference. I love making an impact. But everything I do, I filter it through my lifestyle, meaning that I'm not willing to sacrifice my lifestyle in order to have everything else. There has to be that balance. And years ago, I started thinking about lifestyle from the standpoint of how I want to feel every day. And I had this vision when I was probably in my early 20s, this whole vision around waking up in the morning and walking out on my deck in my bare feet, and the deck was wet, and I had a cup of hot coffee in my hand, and I remember sipping the coffee and taking a breath, and the air was just like fresh, and I felt amazing. And I walk inside, and my wife was in bed, and I brought her some coffee, and then we're chatting, and then my son comes running in and jumps on the bed. And I had this whole vision, and I had no idea what I did. My computer was open on my kitchen table. I saw it in the vision, but I had no idea what I did. What I knew is how I felt. I felt happy. I felt like I worked for myself because I didn't have to be anywhere. Right? I felt like I was creating something. I felt at peace. I felt stress-free. And my whole life, I was always trying to create careers and businesses that fit into the feeling of that vision. Does that make sense? Because a lot of people, I think, when they think about vision, they think about things. Right? I want to have this house, and I want to be doing this, and I want to be living here, and I want to be... But it's really how you feel. And I heard this question posed a few years ago, and I thought, that's it. That's what I've been doing my whole life, which was, what does your perfect average day look like? So what's your perfect average day? Like for some people, their perfect average day is like, I want to get up and I'm going to go to the office and I have this company of 100 people and we're creating this amazing, crazy thing and we're changing the world. And someone else is like, my perfect average day is I sleep until 10 o'clock and I get up and I garden in the backyard and it's beautiful. Like, I don't know, what's your perfect average day, right? And so this started to become my kind of ideal around lifestyle. And then the other piece around lifestyle that I think is really, really important is values. Right, is really understanding what's important to you and what you value. Because if you're not living in alignment with your values, you're not going to be happy. And again, we did a whole episode on this because it's a huge topic of, what is it that I value and how do I prioritize my values? And I think if you want to know what your values are, just look around you. How do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? How do you fill your space? What do you think about every day? What do you talk about? What do you focus on? What do you care about? People often are like, I don't know what my values are. I'm like, just look around. You're going to surround yourself with things that align with your values, for the most part, right? So lifestyle. And then the third piece of this is legacy. And this is an interesting one because for me, legacy kind of changed, right? When I was younger, to me, legacy was, man, I got to create something that lives beyond me, right? Like Shakespeare, right? He wrote these books. He's dead, but everyone still talks about him. That's amazing. I want that. I want to create something that lives beyond my years. There's this saying, right, that you die twice. When you breathe your last breath and the last time someone says your name. And that, I thought, yeah, that's it. I want people to be saying my name in hundreds of years. And that's how I thought about legacy. And then my son was born. And it totally shifted how I thought about legacy. At first through him, but then really through everybody. Because when my son was born, I realized that the greatest accomplishment of my life is him. I mean, that sounds cheesy, and that's not something that would have came out of my mouth 5 years ago, but it's him. Whatever I do, I could create a book that millions of people buy, or I could create, and it doesn't matter, it's him. So now it's like the legacy is really about who's he going to be, right? Which then led me to understand that's really what legacy is, period, right? It's really about how will you show up and how others live. Because if you think about Shakespeare, it's very egotistical for me to say, wow, I want to write a book because I want people to always remember my name and to see this book. But it's not really the book that is Shakespeare's legacy. It's how people live their life because of the book, right? It's what people learn. It's what they take. It's the messages. It's the ideas that integrate into their life. And it's like a ripple in a pond, right? It's like your life drops into a pond and it goes, phew. And then everyone it hits, then their life drops into a pond. And all of a sudden, like 500 years from now, people will be saying things and doing things because their parents told them they should say and do that thing, and their parent told them they should say and do that thing because they had a friend who told them they should say and do that thing, who had a friend who told them they should say and do that thing, and that friend was my son. And my name will never be mentioned in any of that, and it won't matter, right? Because my legacy is not that people say my name. My legacy is ultimately that how I show up while I'm here potentially affects how other people show up after I'm gone. Does that make sense? Which really links back to leadership, right? So I look at these three things. So what do all these three things have to do with control? Because that's how I started all this, right? You guys sat in the room and there was a thing there that said, you have creative control. You always have creative control, right? So what does this have to do with control? Well, for that, I'm going to go to the guru of all gurus, Bill Murray, and just play this short little clip.
Does it get easier?
No. Yes. It gets easier.
Yeah. Look at you.
Thanks. The more you know who you are and what you want, the less you let things upset you.
Yeah.
What he said was, the more you know who you are and what you want, the less you let things upset you. The reason I just talked about all that is because I believe, based on experience, my own and through other people, that in a lot of cases, when people are really frustrated about how things are going, I can't control this, and I can't control this, and I can't control this, and I can't control this, that anywhere from about 30% to 99% of what's really going on is that they're actually not happy with who they are and what they're doing. And then when we're not happy with who we are and what we're doing, what do? We project it, right? Because we don't want to deal with it. So we make it about all this other stuff. When you meet people who are truly in alignment, being the person they want to be, and living the life they want to live, they very rarely get really upset and pissed off about a bunch of stuff around that they can't control. Now, I'm not saying, in a second, I'm going to talk to you about stuff we can't, because sometimes there's just shit we can't control, okay? So, yes, that is true. I'm just saying that the majority of a lot of the times when people are spending all this time going, I just need some advice, I need some coaching, I need some consulting, I need some insight on how I can deal with all the stuff I can't control, that ultimately what's really going on is you're not happy with how you're showing up, you're not happy with the lifestyle you have, you're not happy with the difference you're making or the impact you're making, and you're sitting around and you're going, I wish I had more time, I wish I had more influence, I wish I had more impact, God damn it, it's all the millennials' fault, right? And it's probably not the millennials' fault, okay? So that's the one piece that I wanted to underlie here, okay? Because that a lot of times is the case. And like I said, like 30 to 99%. I don't know if I've ever seen a case where it's not at least like a pretty good chunk of it. But there's times when it's not. There are times when there just is things out of your control. You're happy with who you are and have what you want, and there's this thing that's out of your control and you can't do anything about it, right? So there's this concept called the circle of control. Originally created by Stephen Covey, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. He had two. He had the circle of influence and the circle of concern. And then over time, that turned into 3 rings, which is the circle of control, the circle of influence, and the circle of concern. Basically, in the middle here, you've got things that you can control. Can anyone tell me what the things you can control are? It's real easy. Yourself. The only thing you can control is you, okay? Contrary to the fact that sometimes we think we can control anything else, the absolute only thing in that middle that we can control is us. How we show up, how we feel, how we react, how we proact, that's it, okay? Then you have things that you can influence, okay? That somehow you can make an effect on, sometimes greater effect, sometimes a smaller effect. And then you have things that you have no control or no influence over. That often they call the circle of concern. I don't really like circle of concern because it just makes me feel like I should be concerned about it. And I don't want to be concerned about it. So I just think about it as stuff that I can't control and I can't influence, right? And so this thing about this middle, right, things we can control, this is what happens a lot, I find. And I'm not saying it's not true. Sometimes it's true. But a lot of times you have stuff going on, there's all this stuff that's out of your control, and you're bitching about it and you're upset about it, and someone says to you, well, you just need to change your attitude, man. You need to change your perspective. You need to reframe it, change your attitude. Now, there is a lot of value in reframing. Okay, there's a lot of value in changing your attitude. I'm not saying there's not. I'm just saying there's situations where that is not the answer, okay? Like if I'm on the deck of the Titanic and it's going down and I'm like, I get it, and someone comes up to me and goes, man, you need to change your attitude, dude. I'd be like, yeah, that's not really gonna help right now, right? Or have you ever been in a meeting? Like how many people in here consider yourself an optimist? A cup half full, okay? I'm an optimist. I'm always looking for I tend to think, okay, we can do this, we're gonna make this happen, and people sometimes say to me, you're living in a fantasy world, right? And I'm like, no, but here's the deal, we're both living in a fantasy world. It's just in my fantasy world, we're gonna figure it out, and in your fantasy world, we're fucked, right? So I like my fantasy world better, that's all, right? So we're all living in a fantasy world, so I am an optimist, okay? But that said, I am also a realist. And being positive doesn't always solve the problem. And I've been in meetings with people who are like, it's like, come on, you gotta be positive. And I'm always like, why don't you go to the top of the building? And I want you to just go, I'm positive, and then step off the building and just see what happens. Because I'm pretty sure what's gonna happen is you're gonna go, I'm positive, right? So I appreciate that you're positive, but this is not the answer, right? So sometimes attitude matters, but attitude is not everything. So when attitude is not everything, and something is just genuinely out of your control, like what do? What a lot of people do is they focus on what they call the circle of concern, right? What's out of their control. And the reason they focus on the circle of concern is because it's so big that they think, well, how can we talk about anything else? It's huge, right? And I remember I was doing a training a few years ago, and this guy goes, oh yeah, that's pub talk. And I was like, pub talk? He's like, yeah, pub talk. After work, you go to the pub, you drink beers, and you bitch about all the stuff you can't change. It's pub talk. And I was like, yeah, it is. It's pub talk. You're right. And pub talk's awesome at the pub because sometimes you just need to get it out. Sometimes you just need to bitch and complain. But when we're in it, when we're in the meeting, when we're in the conversation, when we're trying to figure out the problem, bitching and complaining ain't going to help. But what happens is that people get caught up thinking that this is about quality, about quantity, not quality. So when you're looking this is the problem. And you're thinking, well, what sense does it make to focus on that sliver? That sliver is such a small part of the problem. Of course, we've got to focus on this. But this we can't control. It's like being in the middle of the ocean. You're in a rowboat and there's a storm. And you're like, okay, we got to figure out how to change the weather. That is ineffective, right? You might not be able to do anything about the weather, but you got to figure out how to tie your hand to the rowboat. You got to figure out how to maybe put a tarp over. You got to figure out, you can't, focusing on the weather is not going to get anything done. All it's going to do is it's going to make you frustrated and even more angry because you're going to spend all this time and energy and focus on something you can't influence, right? So the fact that it's only 1% doesn't matter because it's the only 1% that you can influence, right? This is the 99%. So it's big, and you think to yourself, well, we got to work on that. We got to try to change the industry. We have to change the way people are thinking. We have to change what's happening. We need to change this regulation. But you can push on it all you want. It's not going to change. But here's the cool thing. This is a really cool thing. I think this is a cool thing because I've tried it, and it works. So people think, I get that the 1% is the only piece I can influence. But what difference does it make? If I change the 1%, I've changed the 1%, and I'm still looking at this big rock that I can't move, right? Is that accurate? So the thing that people don't get is that it's like wrestling. So the analogy I used to give for this was that it's like if you're climbing a mountain and you think, you're trying to solve what's on the other side of the mountain, right? But you don't know what's on the other side of the mountain until you get to the top of the mountain. So you got to get to the top of the mountain and then look on what's on the other side and see what you're dealing with, right? That was the analogy I used to give. Until I had a conversation with a buddy of mine 6 months ago, and he gave me a wrestling analogy, and I was like, that's so much better, right? So I don't know, anyone here wrestle? All right, so there you go, right? You don't have to be a wrestler to understand this, okay? But just think about things in your business that frustrate you and things that you're out of control, and you're this guy right here, okay? And your industry or whatever it is pushing your face into the mat and it's driving you crazy, right? So here you are, you're being pinned down, you're like, I can't control anything. The only thing you have, 1%, the only thing you can do is you can barely reach this guy's hand. And maybe you can't even reach his hand. Maybe you can just reach his finger. And you think to yourself, well, his entire body's on top of me, and I'm pinned to the ground, so what difference is it going to make if I move his finger? So you don't bother, because moving his finger is not going to make a difference. But what happens when you move his finger? What happens when you move his finger is maybe you tweak his finger and he goes, ow, and then he releases his hand, and when he releases his hand, you turn your body, and now you have access to 9% of the problem. And now you can grab his whole arm, and you grab his arm, and you move his arm, and boom, you have access to 20% of the problem. And now you can kind of see his leg, and you move your leg, and you get some leverage, and now you've got access to 50% of the problem, right? Because what happens is, what people don't get about the 1% is that when you change the 1%, the moment, I mean the very second you change the 1%, you've changed more than 1%. Because the minute you change 1%, everything changes. Even just look at the math, right? The minute you change 1%, it's no longer 1% of the problem, right? Just based on math alone, it's now a bigger chunk of the problem because there's less of the problem. But on top of that, when you change one thing, everything changes. Sometimes that change is as simple as your perspective, right? It's kind of that mountain analogy. You're like, oh, I see something different that I didn't see before. Sometimes when you change that one thing, something else, right? Everything's an ecosystem. Something else in the ecosystem shifts. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. So what I always say to people is, look, deal with what's right in front of you. Deal with the first thing. Don't think about the fact that if I change this 1%, it won't matter. Because as soon as you change that 1%, everything's different. Does that make sense? And I'm telling you guys, like when I don't want to say figured it out because I don't want to feel like I've got it figured out, but when I kind of conceptualized this and started testing it, I was like, oh my God, that's so true. And the cool thing about it is it's a lot less frustrating because we spend a lot of time being so frustrated about all the stuff that we can't change. And there's nothing, then you're just in this state of reactivity, right? You're not being proactive because why would you bother? Because you can't change anything. So even if changing the 1% does nothing, even if changing the 1%, everything just sort of stay the same, that's got to be way more fun than trying to move that boulder, right? And the chances that when you change the 1%, the whole equation changes are pretty high. Okay, so as you start to look at some of this stuff going on in your career, whatever it is, the question to ask yourself is, what do you have access to, right? Maybe it's just the finger. Okay, grab the freaking finger with all your might, right? And see what happens. What is the 1%? And again, it might not be 1%, but you get what I'm saying, right? What is the 1% that you can control or influence? Start with that, and then see what the view looks like when that's done. Does that make sense? So that's my message I'm going to leave you guys with. These are a few of the shows, okay? We've got 24 shows right now. We put out a new show every Tuesday. These are a few of the shows that are relevant to what I talked about today, right? The Can You Feel It show talks a lot about feeling and visualizing your success. How do you put that picture together? No Fear, the vulnerability episode. We have a whole episode on values. We have an episode on stories and influence. We have a whole episode called How to Create, where we actually, it's basically, anyone ever see 6 Days to Air, the South Park movie? It's kind of our version of 6 Days to Air, because we create our show in 6 days. So it's a little behind the scenes of how we create the show, but in the process of that, it's talking about the creative process. And there's 18 others. And what I always tell people is, just look at the titles and see what grabs you and says, oh my God, I'm supposed to listen to that. There's definitely like this underlying strange reality show going on in our what? I'm a witch, yeah. So I think it's actually more fun to listen to our show in order, because not only are you getting all these shows, but you're getting kind of this underline, and I'm always tagging back to other things. But you can honestly listen to any single show that grabs your attention. Go, wow, I need to think about values today. Grab the values show, okay? And then the last thing I'll leave you guys with is anyone who's listened to my show at least a few times knows that it's kind of become the motto of Where There's Smoke, which is we're all in this together. I did an episode about caring, and I talked about what you want to have on your tombstone. And I said that my tombstone would say we're all in this together. And I'm just a really big believer in the fact that, like if everyone in this room right now, we all just said, okay, what do you want, what do you want? And we all figured it out, and then we all used our networks and our resources to help everyone in this room get what they want, we'd all get it. Like, we'd all create it. Like, it's madness how much we can do together, okay? And so I say that because genuinely, I want to help you guys if I can, all right? So that's my Twitter handle. That's the email that goes directly to me. If there's any way we can support you, one of the things we're planning on doing with the show as we move forward is we're going to start having like this, we don't know what we're going to call it, a creative corner or something, but we're going to start basically like marketing, publicizing creative people out there and what they're doing. Because again, we're all in this together and we're all doing really, really cool stuff. So if I can support you guys in any way, let me know. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming out tonight. I feel like our most valuable asset is time. It's the one thing we can't get back, right? So I don't know how long I spoke, but I hope if it was 30 minutes, I gave you 31 minutes of value. And I really appreciate you being here. So thank you, guys. Okay.
Tell us something about being wicked.
It is interesting. I have been accused of this by several people. Well, Bill was the first person who wrote me and said, you're reading my mail. And I was like, actually, I'm living in your attic. But, it's one of those things, right? I've been working in personal development for 10, 12 years, and I think we all like to think we're really complicated, including me. Like, you would never understand me. I'm very deep and complex. But, it's like, what do they say? Like, each human being we have, like, there's only 7 fears. Like, we're all so similar, right? Which is, I think, one of the cool things. And it's a little bit like horoscopes, right? You read a horoscope, and you're like, oh my God, this was written just for me, right? So it is really cool that Mark thinks I'm a witch, but I think he might just be normal. Yeah. But yeah, it's cool, right? I mean, that means a lot to me. Like it means a lot to me to think that somebody was at a moment where they were like, what do I do? And something that I said helped them figure it out for themselves. I think that's really cool. So if that makes me a witch, I'm down.
What keeps your creativity alive?
What keeps my creativity alive is a deadline. Has anyone ever read the Art of War? Oh, yeah. Right? So, I read that book years ago, and I've been writing my whole life, but I've never considered myself a writer because I always just wrote when the muse came, right? And he says in that book something along the lines of, yeah, I write when the muse comes too, and the muse comes every Monday morning at 9 a.m., right? And this is the first time that I've actually I have to create, right? Like I don't have of course I could just say I'm not going to put a show out, but I'm forced to and that's new for me because I used to, whether it was music or write, like whatever it was, anything artistic, I would only do it when the muse came. And now I've been forced to be what Stephen Pressfield would call a professional about it and be like, well, if the muse ain't there, I'm going to sit in this chair till it shows up. So I think that a lot of times it's me sometimes stuff happens, right? I wake up in the morning, I flip open my computer, and the internet is just like, wah, and stuff pisses me off. And then I'm like, well, I want to talk about that. Other times I just sit in the chair and I just write and I write and I write until something comes. So I think it's all kinds of stuff, but I think a lot of it now is like just that it's necessity. It's like, okay, I have to be creative. So that's an interesting space for me because I never had to do that before. But.
What's the biggest adversity that you're facing now, and what are you doing about it?
Such a good question. So the biggest adversity there's kind of 2 ways. There's 2 dynamics, right, in what we do, right? There's the creativity part of it, and then there's the marketing part, right? I was talking in Toronto last week, and I said that, I can't remember exactly how I said it, but I said something along the lines of, if you don't market, if you create something and you don't market it, you're really not making a difference, right? Because a lot of creative people like to be like, oh no, I'm just creating, no, I don't want to do all that marketing. It's like, but then you're not making a difference. Yeah, I'm not a salesperson. I don't know. It's like, like we had a couple people give us some backlash because we're always asking people for iTunes reviews and asking people for support. And I just was like, this woman wrote me and I was like, she was like, if your show's great, the quality will speak for itself. You don't need to sell yourself. And I was like, were you a Firefly fan? Right? Because quality doesn't always win. I don't know if anyone was a Firefly fan, but if you could ever think of like a TV show or a band that you loved or a movie that you loved that nobody else watched, right? Like, we got to market ourselves, right? So I think there's two of those things. So my greatest challenge on the creative side is just like literally creating a show every 6 days and sometimes feeling like, because I don't want to put out anything that's crap, and I also don't want to put out anything that's not at least as much as like pretty fully researched. And so like I have a real issue with, you know, like people who misquote stuff, and I'm not saying I haven't done, but you know what I mean? I just don't. So it's how do I go through the natural creative process in 6 days and create something I'm proud of? And then over here, and this is probably our biggest problem, is we're so bogged down with creating a great show every week that we just don't have any time or energy left to market. And so now what we're really doing is we're actually reaching out to our community, and we're just like, who wants to help, man? Like, who wants to help us make some Instagram stuff? Who wants to help us do this? Who wants to, you know, because
if only you could speak in front of an audience.
Yeah. If only there were some creative people.
You might want to help this business.
Yeah. I mean, but we get to, like, the last 2 weeks have been crazy. This week was pretty good, but the last 2 weeks, like, we finished, and this is an extreme example. This hasn't happened before, but we finished 2 weeks ago. We finished the show at 4 in the morning. The Tuesday morning it launched, and last week we finished it at like 3 in the morning. Okay, I know, and it was just, and that was me because I was struggling with the script all week, and by the time I got it done, so then Tuesday I'm just like, right, and then Wednesday I wake up and I go, God, I should put some tweets out and market this thing, and then Wednesday afternoon I'm all of a sudden I'm like, well, what's the next show? You know, and I'm sure you guys, so I have to keep creating, and then I don't know when I can market, but then if I don't market, then nobody's hearing what I'm creating. So did that answer? I mean, that's really what I feel is going on for us.
So what does your perfect average day look like?
That's an awesome question. Well, someone adopts my son so I can sleep in. Let's start there. Well, we're perfect. Great. All right. Yeah, my perfect average day right now, I would say it looks like, it does look like my son's sleeping until 7 a.m., which never happens, but it would look like that. And then it's getting up and getting him off to daycare, and then writing. I figured out that like between 8 to 10 a.m. is like when I'm actually really creative. I don't feel like writing, but if I start writing, I'm really creative. So writing in the morning, and then around mid-morning to like lunch, starting to see what the world wants to say to me, whether it's by email or tweeting or whatever, and doing that. And then at probably like, if it was my average perfect day, I'd probably be having lunch with someone really cool and just talking about life, the universe, and everything. And then working through the afternoon, my son comes home, hanging out with my son, my wife, playing around, fooling around, and then he goes to bed, and then, I don't know, probably writing. I mean, it's weird. Like, this is another challenge, actually. My show, those people who have heard it, it's through the filter of current events, sports, and pop culture. So I'm putting in movie clips and TV clips, and like, I was talking to Nick the other day, and he's like, what we need to do is get you watching more TV. Because I don't have any time to absorb pop culture, and I need to be absorbing pop culture to put it into the show. So that's another like piece that's kind of like missing. So it would actually probably just be like chilling out and watching a movie or something, you know?
What movies while you sleep?
Yeah, that's a good idea. See, solutions. It's all about solutions. Yeah.
In our breakout group, we were talking about how we generally agreed with everything you said, but it might be a little bit easier to say that I'm going to focus on the 1%.
Yeah.
Than to actually focus on the 1%. So I don't know if there's any tips, I don't know kind of how this process has gone for you to be able to just focus on what you can influence.
Well, and I guess what I'd say too is like I mean, if you take just the terminology of circle of concern, right? If it is truly a concern, I don't want to take my eye off of it. So when I say focus, what I also mean is that I'm proactively working on changing that 1%. Because it's the only thing I can change. But I'm still keeping my eye on the 99%, right? And making sure that I'm aware of what's going on. But I think for me, I don't know if there's any magic pill to it, but it's resisting that urge, right? Because it's so big that either you want to try to change it or you want to just stop this and just all bitch about it, right? Because it's so big, you're like, well, like you're standing there and it's pouring rain, right? And everyone's like, don't talk about the rain. Don't talk about the rain. You're like, I'm getting fucking wet. Like, don't talk about the rain. You're like, oh, don't talk about the rain. And it's hard to not do it. But then someone has to remind, guys, no matter how much we talk about the rain, it's not going to stop rain. It's going to stop raining when it's, you know. So I think that is I don't like have a magic answer, but I think it's just that challenge of remembering that any energy you're putting towards that, like paying attention to it and adapting to it, okay. But any energy you're putting towards it, trying to change it or wishing it was different, is wasted energy, right? Yeah.
What's the last 1% you solved and while you're working? What's the next 1%?
That's a good question. He said, what was the last 1% that I, oh, okay, here I'll tell you the ultimate 1% story. Yeah, I don't know if it was exactly the last one, but it's a great one. So, and I'll tell a short version of it. But basically, so when I decided to do this show, I conceived this show a couple years ago, and initially I thought it was going to be a video show because a lot of the influence was the Daily Show. I thought, what if the Daily Show was about self-development, right? That'd be cool. So I thought it'd be a video show, and then I started making some videos, some different videos, not where the smoke videos, and I realized I hated making video. I don't mind being on video, but just like making them on my own. So then I was like, well, wait a second. I love podcasts. I should make a podcast. That's what I want to make. But then I thought to myself, well, I don't have the technical know-how to do any of what I wanted to do. And just kind of roughly thinking to myself, it would probably cost me at least $500 an episode to hire somebody to do what I wanted to do. Not only that, but I actually needed a partner. Someone that had the same influence as me, someone who like appreciated my comedy, who loved This American Life, who loved Radiolab, who had technical skills. And I thought that person probably doesn't even exist. And even if they do exist, I can't afford to pay them, right? So why bother? So I didn't bother for like 2 months. I just did nothing. And I just thought, I got to make some more money. I got to make some more money. And I got to get some things in place so that way I can afford to hire someone to do this. And then one day I was like, well, why don't I just see if I don't even know if the person exists, and even if they do, I can't afford to pay them, right? So what's the first piece of that? I don't know if the person exists. So I put an Elance ad up, and I won't go into the whole story, but basically through a series of very crazy events, I ended up meeting Nick, who loved This American Life, who loved Radiolab, who had all the same like comedy influences as me. I told him I couldn't afford to pay him. He said, well, let's just do a pilot episode and see how it goes. You can pay me $150 to do a pilot, and we'll see if we even work well together. We did this pilot episode. It went amazing. And then he goes, well, actually, I have to come out to San Francisco for 4 months because I got a contract with George Lucas's company, and I have nowhere to stay. I was like, great, you can stay with me, and I'll barter you. You stay with me, and I'll exchange you staying with me to do the show. And then before, like by the time those 4 months were over, we were in a partnership. And it's, I mean, I've never paid him a dime. I still owe him the $150. He always jokes So that was like a really great example of dealing with what's right in front of you. Let me see if the person exists first. If they do, then I can figure out how do I pay them. And I would have never thought, well, I bet you the person exists, and then maybe they're moving to San Francisco, and I can tell my wife that I'm going to change my office into a spare bedroom, and she's going to say, fine, we're going to move some guy we don't know into our house, and we have a 2.5-year-old. Let's do that, right? So, like all, you know, but that's what happened, right? So that was the last one, or that's the best last one. Yeah, the 150. What is the 1% in front of me right now? That's a good question. Or what is the thing right now that is really that I feel like I can't control? Gosh, that's a great question. I mean, I've got all this stuff going on with time, but I don't know if that's really it. I don't know. Let me marinate on that. I'm gonna take a couple questions in it because I don't want to make something up for the sake of making something up. So let me marinate on it. It's a great question. All right. Yeah.
Well, speaking of the $150,
yeah.
Have you monetized your show?
We have not monetized our show. Do you want me to say anything more about that?
I mean, you're doing it because you love it, but are you want to make money off of it eventually?
Yeah. So I mean, we're doing it because we love it, and I wouldn't do it if there wasn't a way to monetize it. Obviously, this is my career. This is what I want to do. So there's 2 ways you can directly monetize a podcast. One is to build up an audience and sell sponsorships, right? But that's pretty. I mean, you get about $50 per 1,000 downloads for a podcast. So you have to have a pretty significant audience to make good money at it, or have a real niche audience that people really love, or have a cool audience like our audience. So I think we'll get paid more. The second way you monetize a podcast is through audience support. So a lot of podcasters use like Patreon. If you guys know what Patreon is, right? It's kind of like Kickstarter for artists. And people will say, well, I'll give $2 for every podcast, or $5 for every podcast, or they build like incentives, like if you give $5 a podcast, you also can be part of a Google Hangout we do every month or whatever, right? So those are the 2 ways. When we started our podcast, my thought was if we did either one of those, it would be the latter, because my goal was to build a community. And I give $5 every month to Radiolab. I give $5 every month to This American Life. So I thought if we can build a really cool community, I believe that community will support us. So out of those 2 options, Not that I have an issue with sponsorship, but that was what I thought. Then the indirect way is that it also becomes a calling card, right? So Nick, who has a company called Podcast Monster, this has become like people are calling him going, how can you make my podcast sound like that, right? And he's getting business out of it. And then me, like I'm standing in front of you right now, so like the millions of dollars, millions, right? So I mean, so the other part of it was that I believed that if I could, because I love doing keynotes, I love talking in front of groups, so I thought if I can build this up and I can get the message out I want to the world, that it will lead to me being able to do keynotes at companies and different things. So those are the ways to monetize, and we've done none of that yet. We're definitely on the cusp of talking about whether we want to launch some sort of community campaign or a sponsorship campaign, but I took a pretty significant financial hit to move back to Toronto because that was what my wife wanted, and I thought it was best for my son too. So at some point, just realistically, I'm going to have to figure out like what the next step is. But I don't know. It's that whole idea, right, of just do good work and then figure it out. So we'll figure it out.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Yeah.
I've been waiting to ask this, and I almost forgot it. But it was about showing up with presence. So you said under leadership that showing up with presence was one of the main tenets of essentially actualizing that in your life. So my question is, how do you on a daily practice level become aware of if you are showing up with that presence you want to or not? Do you meditate? Do you have mantras? How do you get to a state where you're fully aware of the person you want to be?
Yeah.
And if you're doing it.
So again, I'll answer that as far as like what do I think are some of the best practices, which is not to say that I always achieve them. I'm a huge believer in meditation. I'm a huge believer in it. I really, it's like amazing medicine, right? Just to, like, I remember meeting this woman years ago, and she was like, she coached all these like really successful CEOs and high-powered people, and like her favorite line was they'd go on a 20-minute rant about something, and she'd just go sit on the pillow, right? And like her whole thing was just go sit on the pillow, right? And when I first started meditating, it kind of amazed me that, because I'm someone who was always trying to fix things, and it amazed me that I was always trying to actively fix things, and that I could actually go into a room, sit on a pillow, and conceivably do nothing for 30 minutes. And when I was done, things seemed fixed. That was really crazy to me, right? Because I just thought, well, how can you fix something by doing nothing, right? But you start to realize, it goes back to what I kind of talked about, right? About how oftentimes when people are bitching about what they can't control, most of it has nothing to do with any of that. So when you calm yourself, you know how I like to think about meditation? This is a good visual. It's a little bit dated now, but back in the, when you used to have like PC computers and you would refrag them, and remember it would be like all the different colors, it'd be like, and then you'd hit that button and it'd go, and it'd line up all the colors. It would. That's how I feel like meditation is for me. Like in my brain, it's like, and then I sit on a pillow and it's like, and you're like, oh, okay, right? So I think meditation is a huge one. And then the other thing I like to play with is doing anything to keep me out of, like part of it is that whole game of like how the man I want to be, that worked. But anything that gets me out of autopilot. Okay, so for example, years ago when we had our office downtown, I used to drive to work. And so I said, okay, for every day for the next 30 days, I'm going to drive a different route to work. Right? Because you go to work, you drive to work, you get there, you don't remember driving there. Because you just go into autopilot. But I would drive, even if I just took a left and went a block. And then the next month, I would drink coffee every morning. So I said, every morning I'm going to get coffee at a different place. Right? Because you just go to the same coffee place, you get your coffee, and off you go. And the more stuff you do this routine, and I have nothing against routine. Routine's awesome. And if anyone have kids, you need routine, right? Then you appreciate routine even more. But it's just all autopilot, right? So I think anything you can do to shake yourself out of autopilot gets you present in the moment. That becomes a cool practice to be more aware of what you're doing. Yep.
I'm not sure that I really got what you were saying, that when you're upset with stuff you can't control, chances are it's because you're not happy with who you are.
Yeah.
Do you have a story to illustrate that?
Oh, I have lots of stories to illustrate
that.
Okay, good. So we tend to project a lot, right? So, I mean, just think about it. Have you ever been in a situation where you're having a bad day, you're upset about something, you're stressed out about something, and someone in your life says, hey, you didn't wash that plate, and you're like, get off my freaking back, and you're like, whoa, like your reaction is so much greater than what's going on, because what's actually happening is that you're pissed about something else, or you're stressed about something else, and you just kind of project that on people, right? So what I often find happens is that, like, when you're happy, when you're content, when you're in alignment, you're loving what you're doing, you're feeling good, you're more patient, for sure. Your fuse is a lot longer. You're more empathetic to other people. Like, one of the things in my life is, again, I'm a big believer in support, right? When I ask people for support, I have never, ever had a very successful person say no to supporting me. When I ask people who are successful, meaning that, when I say successful, I mean they're happy with what they're doing and who they are, they always say yes. I find it's the people who aren't happy with who they are and what they're doing that say no. Because they're in this kind of space of like, well, I'm not getting what I want, so I'm not going to help you get you want. And it's a lot of times it's subconscious. It's not conscious, but that's where they're coming from, right? So another thing that I always am aware of is, and this is, again, not all the time, but a lot of the times, if someone presses your buttons, so if there's someone in your life that you're just like, God, they really bug me. They're usually, in a lot of cases, I'll say, it's because they are reminding you of a part of you that you don't like, or they're doing something that you also do and you're not aware of it, and so you're projecting it. So I used to have this thing where when I would meet people who really like bothered me, like I'd be like, God, this guy, he drives me insane. I got to hang out with him more, you know? And my wife was always like, what is your problem? And I was like, what did she call me? She called me a self-development masochist. Right? Because I had this, I don't even know if that makes sense, but that's what she called me, right? She's like, it's like you need to like figure out, because I was like, well, that's an opportunity. Like there's no rational reason why someone should get under my skin that much. So if they get under my skin that much, it's got to have something to do with me. And even if it's just that I'm not patient, I got to figure out what it is. So I would just hang around with them until I got to a place where they did not push my buttons as much. And I usually would figure out that what they were doing was actually pissing me off because it was reminding me of something I did that I was ignoring.
Spot it, you got it.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that. You spotted, you got it. So I don't know if that's like a story, but that's the idea, is that we're often projecting. And so a lot of times I find that when we're like bitching about all this stuff out here, it's because we just don't want to actually look inside about something that we're not happy with. Does that make sense?
I didn't really understand.
Okay. Cool. All righty.
Sir.
Sir?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.